Saturday, August 12th at about 11:14 a.m. and my purpose here is to create a video to answer some of the questions I've gotten as far as why am I putting myself out there on the YouTube and showing a glimpse into my life. Why would you do a vlog? So I want to answer that because there's a lot of reasons why you do it, and it's something that really took me a while, about a year of thinking about it before I'm actually going out to do it. So I'm going to lay out to you the entire manifesto, if you will, of why you should do a vlog as a means to personal motivation, holding yourself accountable, and in essence exposing yourself, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, which I think is consistent with a lot of things that people do. I mean, there's always that aspect where your family and friends can do it, and people will start to question your motives, but no, it's really something. It's a therapy for yourself. It's a way to establish yourself and move forward, break new ground, and show that to the world. So as a starter, I'm going to say that today this is going to be the first entry for I don't know if we call it a fitness vlog for people, but I've set a couple rules for myself that I'm going to follow, and eventually we're going to do a before and after. So we're going to look at my progress, because needless to say, I do a lot of running, and my weight is very important when I run, because that's the impact on your feet, and that can really hold you back. Now, having a little more weight is good at times. For example, when you're doing calisthenics, I mean, I have a 90-pound weight vest over there to do that, and I run with a pack a lot, but you need to cut weight when you're running or in your everyday life, just so you give your feet, your joints, a time to heal. And it doesn't matter how much turmeric or other medications you use, you're going to start circling the drain pretty quick as far as your everyday life is concerned. So one of my objectives here is to lose weight so that I can be a better runner. And what I plan on doing, so rule number one, no sugar of any kind. In fact, we're going to say no sweetness of any kind. So I've done this before, and yeah, you lose weight, but really we have too much sugar, and that's a quick way of removing the fat stores and then losing all that weight that you don't want to have. Rule two, no carbonated beverages. Now, this one is a little harder because I know I like it, and there's things like seltzer waters, which are pretty nice, but none of those. I'm water here on out. And that would also mean with a no sugar, no fruit juice. So as far as the way that you get your vitamins, it looks like I'm going to have to do multivitamins as a means to supplement. I mean, vegetarians have been doing it a long time. Which brings me to number three. That is no animal proteins, or very minimal animal proteins. So what I mean by that would be no whey proteins. I'm going to focus on pea proteins. I'm going to focus on other natural sources. Spinach does have some protein, but none of it. And by extension now, we're also getting to, a lot of vegetables have it, but I'm going to have to retract from cruciferous vegetables such as kale, Brussels sprouts, and broccoli, things of that nature. Yes, they have nutrients, but they would wreak havoc on my gastrointestinal system over the course of doing calisthenics, and I just can't have it. So following those four rules, now going forward, what is the exercise regimen going to be? And that is going to be determined on a daily basis. What I will do is I will provide a whiteboard on a day-by-day basis as we progress on this journey together. And I will show what I've accomplished during that day. I will also perhaps discuss my diet. I haven't been sure about that yet. Ways to potentially cover the exercise that I do, because how do you quantify calisthenics and running? Do you do it just based on time on a treadmill? No, that doesn't really add up, because you don't have speed, you don't have power output. So I will make an attempt to get those performance factors in there. The same thing with the calisthenics. It doesn't just matter that you did 10 push-ups or however many pull-ups. What matters is quantity and power output. So the duration of time that you do these things is also important. And I'm sure a lot of people would think, well, this is what CrossFit does, and not necessarily, because you're following a workout, and I believe very strongly that when I was growing up doing sports, that the coach was very intelligent. They were brilliant at knowing exactly what to do and how to push you. But there's another school of thought here too, and this is where we balance, which is, how about you just push through it, period, and you get better. So one very cool thing that I saw this past week was an interview. It was between the CEO of Quest protein bars and David Goggins. And if you don't know who David Goggins is, look him up. But the interview is called How to Make Yourself Immune to Pain with David Goggins. And basically this guy was a rock star in every aspect of his military career, probably the best military athlete ever. So absolute inspiration to me, and has been for a long time. So if you haven't seen it, I recommend you look at it. But it does it sets the objective on how to move forward. Now, one of the things that David Goggins did do is he broke the Guinness World Records for most pull-ups in 24 hours. And an interesting part of that, it ended up being a little over 4,000, was it wasn't on his first attempt that he did it. So he failed twice. I mean, sure, epic fail. He failed twice before accomplishing his goal. And he said, you think I just got on a bar and said I'm going to win the record? He said it was 67,000 pull-ups is what he did in order to accomplish that 4,000. So that rings near and dear. The hardest part of both these objectives that I set out for myself, the diet and the exercise, is in fact it's how you keep it accountable, how you monitor it, because monitoring it doesn't necessarily get you directly to your goal. You know, this is the same thing in organizational theory, right? You can even look at nonprofits. What is the administrative cost associated with things? And I've found out when I've been very successful in my positions, I've delegated 80% of my time, roughly, to the organizational aspect, actually organizing my job so then I can hit things directly. And I'm not kidding, I think that was about 80% of my time. I think the same holds true here. When I first came here, I was exercising 5 hours a day. So there's no way, there's not even enough hours in the day to do the administration if I'm trying to quantify all of that. But what it means is that I will have to put in that extra effort, and that may be another hour or two a day, in order to bring that valuable data forward. And then this is where we start to create the story. You start to see the progress and what it really takes in order to build yourself back up. I have a video up on my page called Grumpy Lung, and that was about 3 years ago. And that's where I had a pneumothorax from a bike crash on my BMX bike. You see my BMX bike vlogs. And the lung exploded, air around the heart, and they had to vent it. So right when they struck the lung, you heard a whoosh sound, and it shot fluid all over the wall. And I was in the waiting room for 10 hours before they operated on that thing. It was absolutely brutal. I made that video because I knew that the very next day they were pulling that tube out. And if you don't know anything about pneumothorax, that can kill you like that. So I could have died at any second sitting in that waiting room. I didn't, thankfully. And then I made that video because when they were going to pull that tube out, I heard rumor, there was some concern that that might be my triggering moment where it lights out. So I made that video potentially be my last video. Well, it's not, and so I say go and see it, but here I am now making new videos and building up past a very hard period in my life. Another thing in that that occurred in August. In January of that year following, I was in a very hard place. For the month of January, I ate 800 calories per day, which equates to 3/4 of one Subway sandwich every day. And my body was collapsing, for lack of a better word, at that point. You know, I would say I was getting pretty near the decline, the death point. Now, thankfully, I was able to move on from there and have been building up ever since. About a year and a half ago, I had running. I was running 70 to 80 miles a week with a pack, all on concrete. And well, the other bad part was I was an idiot wearing very cheap running shoes. But I had a nasty foot injury and collapsed an arch in one foot, so I've been running with that, and just it hasn't been very good. It's the strangest feeling. It's not a muscle pain. It's when you're really, it's bone on bone. But now I'm working ways around it, and I'm figuring it out. But this is one of the big drivers for what I'm doing here today. So another reason why you would do a vlog, and because I want to hold myself publicly accountable to these goals. That is not the only thing that motivates me. For example, I have a cousin where he will run a marathon all on his own, an unsung hero. It's not a marathon. He's not paying to run, but in New England in winter, the middle of winter, on New Year's Day, 26.2 miles in the wilderness, just him versus himself. And it's not for any public support. That's his own challenge for himself. I could very easily have done that. But making yourself publicly accountable is a different story. This is on the premise that we are a social species, but also something more. It's, you see with businesses where people will have their name on the side of a building, let's say, or you'll name a company after themselves. What you're doing is you are staking your own reputation on your performance. And the idea being that's what drives us. It is, in fact, making it competition and getting yourself out there and activating those other instinctive parts of ourselves that maybe we wouldn't get elsewhere. And that's one of the things I found. I can push myself all day long, but it's definitely ballsy to make yourself publicly accountable on your claims. And with that being said, this is my objective here. I'm making myself publicly accountable to the world to provide this productive output, this fitness journey to the world. So that being said, this is day one. This is August 12th of 2017, and this is day one, and I will stick by those rules. If I do not, I will be honorable, and I will say I did not stick to the rules today. So there you have it.